don't you understand, I already mentioned before, church and state should be always separate. And the Bible reveals and gives a prophecy to us in Revelation 13:5. And we understand in Revelation 13:11, it talks about this lamb-like beast that speaks as a dragon. And we already identified who that lamb-like beast is, the United States of America, that grew out of the earth. And we have identified that in the past, but see again what the prophecy is saying. And when we're studying Daniel, always understand it has a sister book of Revelation. And we're living in the time of Revelation. We're living in that time right now. But even though in our study today we're going to go back, but what you see in the past, you're going to see today. But Revelation 13:5, and he, we know that lamb-like beast, United States, had power to give what? Life into the image of the beast. Now you already know the beast is not good. The beast of Revelation 13 points at a little horn, which is a papacy. And then it says it's going to make an image to the papacy of both mixing church and state. Well, anyway, let's move on. The power is given to give life to the image of the beast, and that the image of the beast should do what? Both speak and cause. Now, if you have a republic government, and if it's going to cause a church to be able to speak and cause, don't they have to have some type of partnership? Some type of an agreement? And he's saying that we're going to be able to, that the image of the beast will both be speak and cause as many as would not worship the image of the beast. So those who don't fall in line with the doctrines and the policies of the image of the beast, what's it say? Should be killed. So God is warning his people. He's revealing this in his word. And we look at what's happening today. It's been going on. It's been slowly, stealthily moving forward. And this is where we are. I'm just going to give you some more prophetic updates quickly before we move in our study today. This is some commentary referring to the text I read. You find it in Great Controversy, page 573 by Ellen White. Powerful commentary here concerning that. In the movements now in progress in the United States to secure for the institution and usages of the church the support of the state. Now, what's the church going to do? Go to the state to support its institutions. And we find that this is happening today, where the churches are linking up with the government to support its institutions. But you see, there's a problem with that, because these institutions that's being supported is pushing false worship. Protestants are following the steps of who? The papist. Protestants are following the steps of who? The papists. Nay, more, they are opening the door of the papacy to regain in Protestant America the supremacy which he had lost in the old world. And we're going to show you what they did in the past, how they got power, and they're going to repeat itself in the now, the future. And that which is greater significance to this movement is the fact, here it is the principal object contemplated is the enforcement of Sunday observance. This was right around the corner. This is going to be the mark of the beast Christ, and is right upon us. A custom which originated with who? With Rome. Can't show anything in the Bible. The Sunday is not Sabbath. That's the first day of the week, and there's nothing in the Bible that shows that. And many people say, well, that's not a big deal. Yes, it is a big deal. If God said it, we need to follow his word. And which he claims to be as a sign of her authority. Whose authority we want to follow? The authority of men, the papacy, or the authority? Because that's where did Protestant come from? The word Protestant meant from the very beginning to protest against the papacy. It's still the same. But today's Protestants, they don't even know what Protestant means. They think Protestant means a denomination. No, Protestant is those who protested, and most denominations in America came out of the Protestant Reformation. I'm telling you, remember again, the purpose of the Constitution is to uphold the rights of any individual, regardless what the majority says. You know that? That's the difference between a republic and a democracy. See, we've now used the word democracy so loosely, not understanding the difference. We think a democracy is like, okay, it's for the people, by the people. That is true. But a true republic is one that where the Constitution trumps everything. So it doesn't matter what the majority may say, it's what the Constitution says. So if it's two people that this law violates, we go by the Constitution, not by what majority says. But over time, a democracy based on things on majority, this majority rules. But over time, we've been using that terminology, the democracy, in which we have transitioned from a republic to a democracy to a dictatorship. And that's exactly what happened to Rome. Y'all remember, we talked about it last week. That's what happened to Rome. Was a republic. That's where we get our Senate from. That's where we get our that's part of our Constitution, is looking at what Rome used to have. But they transitioned. So let's go ahead and continue. Daniel, Revelation, end time prophecies. Let's go ahead and continue in this here. Come on now. Daniel 11 overview. One thing again, I won't be able to go through every single detail today, a review anyway, but we're going to hit a lot of good stuff here. But remember, in Daniel 11, that's the fourth vision. That's the last vision, which starts in Daniel chapter 10. Now remember the repeat and enlarge. God is revealed to us in Daniel. What's the main theme of Daniel? What's the main theme of Daniel? The rise and falls of kingdoms. And God gave us the basic foundation of the rise and fall of the kingdom in Daniel chapter 2. And we saw in the head of gold represented Babylon, Media Persia, the chest and arms of silver, the belly and thighs of brass. Who's the belly and thighs of brass represent? Greece, and then the legs of iron, Rome, and then the divided Europe with the feet. But we notice again, everything is moving forward. So when we get to the book of Daniel 11, when we go to Daniel 11, everything's moving forward to the end of time. Starting from Babylon, that's where the prophecies start from. Babylon moving forward to who? The everlasting kingdom. So now we go into Daniel chapter 11, 1 through 13, what we looked at already. Some of the highlights that we hit. It gave us a fall of the first empire, which was Babylon. It gave us a rise of that second empire, which is Media Persia, and the rise of the third empire, which is Greece. Now remember again, it is repeating and enlarging. To get from Daniel chapter 2, it's not giving us new kingdoms. It may add one, like if it just gave us 5 kingdoms, and 4 kingdoms in Daniel chapter 2, it introduced another kingdom later on as we continue to go forward. But we find that here in Daniel chapter 11, because in Daniel chapter 11, for the first time, we'll learn about a 6th empire, and then we'll know who the 7th empire, that final empire is, and you already have an idea of that already. So here, this is a outline. This is an outline, because one thing is you want to do is compare outline with outline. So as we're going through Daniel chapter 2, God gives us an outline. Remember, we compare that outline to Daniel chapter 7. And then we compared it to Daniel chapter 8. That's the third vision. And then we compared it to the fourth vision. So that's what we're going to find here in Daniel chapter 11. Same thing. Daniel chapter 11 is giving us literal, it's not symbolic. All the other ones were symbolic, like the beast represents, nations, and the head of gold. All those things represented symbolically a nation. But in Daniel chapter 11, it gives us plain language. It's describing the rise and the falls of the kingdoms. So here we can compare outline with outline and line it up with Daniel chapter 11 of what we've already learned. Now in Daniel chapter 11, verse 1, we looked in Daniel 11, the fall of Babylon. Verse 1 basically is moving us to, because that's what Gabriel said, he was helping bringing up Persia. He was one behind help. He was one of the ones angels behind that. But in Daniel verse 1, Babylon falls. but that links up with the head of gold. Also links up because the lion with lion's wings, with eagle's wings rather, in Daniel chapter 7 represented who? Babylon. Then of course in Daniel 8 they're not mentioned. And then in verse 2, in Daniel 11 verse 2, it talked about the Persian kingdom being stronger at the end of the Medes and Persian kingdom. And the last Persian king stirred up Greece with the build up of his wealth and military might. He's not, I'm sorry, he was not the last Persian king. He was that fourth king that was mentioned in verse 2. So that was a mistypo. So he was one of the king, Artaxerxes. He was, matter of fact, he was the same king. He was the same king of Queen Esther, Ahasuerus, that's spoken of in Esther. But anyway, he stirred up Greece with building up his military wealth and his son Artaxerxes. He continued that on and supplied money to the enemies of Greece. They tried to beat Greece, but never were able to beat Greece. But anyway, but that links up, coincides with the breast and arms of silver that's in Daniel chapter 2. That also coincides with Daniel chapter 7, the bear with 3 ribs in his mouth. That also represented Medo-Persia. We find that in Daniel chapter 8, representing the ram with 2 horns, one higher than the other. That's representing the Medo-Persian kingdom. Again, the Persian kingdom grew stronger than the Median, because remember, the Medes and Persian was a co-kingship. And then the Persians became stronger with just Persian kings after Darius died, the first king of that partnership when they took over Babylon. But they ruled from 538 BC to 331 BC for 207 years. And then after that, we found another kingdom rose up. We know that's Greece. Well, in verse 3 in Daniel chapter 11, it talks about that mighty king, King Alexander the Great, who defeats and conquers the Medo-Persian kingdom. And that represents the belly and thighs of brass. And again, that was a typo, defeats Artaxerxes, but he defeated the king of the Persian kingdom, Medo-Persian kingdom. But that links up with the belly and thighs of brass. Also the four-headed leopard in Daniel chapter 8, 7. And then that he-goat you found in Daniel chapter 8. All lining up perfectly. And if you go to the notes, again, you go on pathwaytopeace.net, you can get these notes and you can actually contemplate and look at it in more detail and suck it all in. And that's the reason why I have it there. But you notice again, as the Bible revealed in verse 4, what happened to Alexander the Great? What happened to him? He dies. Was representing and what happened after he died? What happened to the kingdom? It split off in 4 generals, representing the 4 wings of 4-headed leopard. Also, it talked about in the he-goat, the horn was broken and it grew up in the 4 in its place. You see how they're all lining up, and revealed that clearly in verse 4. And in verse 5, they continue to build up their military strength. Ptolemy is the area of Egypt. Ptolemy, because the 4 general, Ptolemy was one of them. And the Seleucus, Ptolemy was in the Egypt area. That's the southern kingdom. And then you had Seleucus in the northern kingdom. And they wanted to expand to be the next superpower. But here were the 4 generals here: Ptolemy, Seleucus, Lysimachus, and Cassander. And we found again, Ptolemy was in Egypt, was the southern kingdom, and Seleucus was the northern kingdom. And who's between those 2 kingdoms? Israel. Okay. And because these prophecies have to do with God's people. Locally, which was Israel, and then, of course, today, worldwide. God's people worldwide. And then verse 14, it continued on. That linked up with, because it calls the robbers of the people, that was Rome. The robbers of the people, those who crushed the victims like an iron fist, that was Rome. Perfectly description of Rome, the legs of iron. And then we see that they become the new king of the north. But that links up with that hideous beast with 10 horns. That's in Daniel chapter 7. Links up with that first phase, that little horn, that pagan Rome, in Daniel chapter 8. So again, we're lining it up. But what God is doing for us, he's just giving us more details, how they overcame, how they conquered the next nation. And then we continued, and we don't have time to review all that right now, but when we continued on in Daniel chapter 11, verse 14 through 22, we saw the rise of that fourth empire, which is the robbers of the people, which is pagan Rome. Now remember again, pagan Rome, which was they served pagan gods, false gods. They borrowed many of their gods from who? Greece. But we notice when it went from pagan Rome, we learned this in Daniel chapter 8, to papal Rome, they did the same thing. Took the same images, but this time they did something that's blasphemous. They said, now this represents Mary. This represents Jesus, baby Jesus. When it didn't represent, when before it was Ceramis and baby Nimrod or something. Ceramis, I can't remember the lady's name, but it was a god. It was a Greek god. It was a Roman god and goddesses. But they said this is baby Jesus and Mary. And then you had Jupiter. They said that's Peter. This is Saint Peter. Same exact image. But they took the things of pagan Rome and Christianized it, so to speak. And it says now this is of God. But we found that fourth empire, the robbers of thy people, robbers meaning they were crushers. They killed, they destroyed. The robbers of thy people, the raiser of taxes. Remember when Mary and Joseph had to go to Bethlehem? Why? Because all the world would be taxed. That's right. And they were the new king of the north. So today we're going to continue to look at in more detail. We've seen this little horn before. So we're going to look at him again in the context of Daniel chapter 11 now. And you'll find this whole commentary in Daniel chapter 11 through 23 through 35. Because people ask, so how do they receive their power? What are some acts and things they've done to receive that power, to take away the power from pagan Rome, and then they receive the power? Now, one thing we do know, that just unlike the others that were taken over, all the others were taken over, Babylon, Media, Persia, Greece, Rome in the past. Well, Babylon, Media, Persia, and Greece in the past were taken over by an army conquering them. What we find here, it was not an army that conquered Rome, pagan Rome. Their power was taken from them, and we find out as a result who comes rising up as a world power that affected not only the Israel, but affected God's people worldwide. This little horn, that fifth empire, we already know the papal Rome, went through all the characteristics of that in Daniel chapter 8, so I want time to look into that. But notice again, when you look at Daniel chapter 2, when you go to Daniel chapter 2, we saw the head of gold, the breast and arms of silver, the belly and thighs of brass, the legs of iron, and then the feet of part iron and part clay. But what you're finding here as we go to Daniel chapter 7, you're finding more details of what's here in the feet. And in Daniel chapter 8, you're finding more details of what's in his feet. And when you find that fifth empire, which is papal Rome, which ruled for 1,260 years from 538 to 1798 AD. So again, in Daniel chapter 23 through 35, historically, the historical prophetic outline aligns with the outlines of Daniel 7, and it aligns with Daniel 8, but it gives us greater detail how they came into the fifth empire. Now remember Paul's warning in the New Testament church. Let's go look at that warning that Paul gave the New Testament church. Probably read it before, we're going to read it again. Very important. Acts 20, verse 29 through 30. Because remember, Jesus warned his people that in last days there will be false Christs and false prophets. So we have to know. This is what he says. Acts 20, verses 29 through 30. For I know this, that after our departing shall grievous wolves enter among you, not sparing the flock. Also of your own selves shall men arise, speaking what? Perverse things to draw people to the truth? No, it says to draw people away, disciples after them, away from God, Jesus being the center and focus, where the bishops now become the center and focus, where the pastors become the center and focus, not God. And he said, this is happening right now amongst yourselves. It's happening now. And he revealed it to them. Because he says, after our departing, grievous wolves are going to come in. Let's go to 2 Thessalonians 2, 3 and 4. This is what he says. Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there be a what? A falling away first. So the Lord reveals there's going to be a what? A falling away first. And that man of sin revealed. That man of sin revealed, the son of perdition. What does that son of perdition do? Who opposes and exalted himself above all that is called God or that is worship, so that he is God. Listen to what it says. So he that as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. Come on now. So in other words, he's revealing that this system, this false system, will puff itself up as if they are God. But he says in the end time, the son of perdition, the son of destruction will be revealed. And we know we studied it all about the papacy, and that's been revealed already to us. But that's the warning. So in other words, a lot of people ask the question, so how did the papacy get started? Did they just say one day to say, well, we're going to be the papacy, and you're the pope, and you're the cardinals, and you're the bishop, and we're going to set up this thing where you have Mary, and everybody's going to be saved. Did this all start off that way? No, it didn't. It didn't start off that way. It started off, as Paul revealed, people who had the truth, who compromised from the truth. But when people compromise from the truth, do they ever say, I've compromised from the truth and now I'm false? They still say they are of the truth. And that's the reason why the Bible reveals to us. Now, do you want to know the truth from the air? The only way you're going to know the truth from the air is what? The word of God. To the law and to the testimonies. Isaiah 8:20, what's it say? To the law and to the testimonies, and they speak not according to this word, there is no light in them. So God revealed it. So during the time of the New Testament church, the New Testament church were being persecuted for following the truth. They're being persecuted from the Jews, and they're being persecuted by Rome. But there was a problem. The Jews hated Rome. Remember what happened in 70 AD. Because Rome, the Israel wanted to get from under Rome. Even though they collaborated in killing Christ, but they still hated each other. They didn't like each other. So, but we saw that the Jews are killing Christians. But at the same time, there's Jews who are now becoming Christian. Now, if a Jew becomes a Christian, can he get rid of his lineage, his identity, because he's a Jew? Because, just like I'm African American, even, I'm always African American. So I can't get rid of my identity because who I am. So even though a Jew became a Christian and believed in Christ, he can't get rid of his identity. He's now in Christ, but he's a Christian, but he's still a Jew. So what's happening now, you have Rome who's fighting against Israel, the Israel that rejected the Christ, but now you have these Jews that are becoming Christians. It's causing confusion even with Rome. So they're killing both. They're killing Christians and they're killing the Jews. But one thing they notice, the more they martyr the Christians, the bigger they continue to grow. And they grew, and they grew, and they grew. But now, looking at the whole scheme of things, it's like, wait a minute. Now they're putting a threat on our paganism. Was official religion of Rome was paganism. So now a lot of people are losing money because at one time you had a group of pagans who used to worship, because this message not only went to the Jews about the Savior, Jesus Christ, but it went to the Gentiles who used to be pagan, and now they used to at one time worship paganism. They used to have their curious books, and now they learned about Jesus and the salvation of Christ. What do they do with those curious books? What did they do with those witchcraft books, those paganistic books? They took them out and they burned them. It said 50,000 silver money worth, a lot of money. A lot of money worth of books burned. And what do you think the people are, their business depends on that? They're like, wait a minute. So they go to the guy like, man, you gotta help us out. So they start, of course, continue to burn and kill Christians. We know about the big coliseums of Christians being burned and killed and maimed because they want to follow God's truth. Remember, some were dipped in tar and burned on the streets to give lights to the dark streets of Rome. And they were also put in the coliseums as sport and killed by lions and ripped apart by lions in front of spectators by the thousands. And it continued throughout that time of papacy's Rome as pagan Rome, I should say, as pagan Rome continued on. And you had a lot of martyrs, millions killed during that time. But as time went on, the church leadership in Rome compromised. Why? To stop some of the persecution. They, in their mind, said, well, we can put off some of this persecution or make it less if we begin to compromise. And that's what they did. They began to compromise. And over time of this compromising, they kept the same name Christian, but created a whole new organization. And it was known later as the Universal Catholic Church, the Papal Rome. That's prophesied by Paul and Peter. Decades after the death of many from the New Testament, church split from its purity and established a new corrupt church known as Papal Rome. And I'm going to give you some history, a little bit more history about that in a little bit. The leaders of this new organization, they didn't make an official decree and say, now we are the new church. They didn't make an official decree. They claim that they are the church of purity. They are the universal church. That's why they named themselves Catholic, or they consider themselves Catholic. The word Catholic means universal, meaning the universal church of God. We are the representatives of God here on this earth. And they'll never say they denied they've been split.